I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Wednesday, October the 16th. Is there a correction in sight? It's hard to say, but it's very, very possible. As I've been talking all week, we've gained 12 bucks in a month on your fat cattle trade and barely a hiccup in there. Just gain and dollars in gobs. And we don't have a lot of leverage, we know that. There hasn't been a lot of trade ever since the fire in Holcomb, Kansas. Our weekly negotiated fed cattle volume has been well below a year ago and well below normal. Yet we still keep gaining a little bit of ground all the time. They claim that we've got a lot of market-ready cattle in Kansas and places. Some of the carcasses are getting big. They're leaving them on feed quite a while, trying to keep from having as many selects as they have to, because we've got a big wide choice select spread. We've got the best demand for our middle meats as we've ever had for this time of year. But it's just it's hard to say whether all that's true or not, because we still hear that they're hauling fats from Nebraska down into Kansas. If they're doing that, why in the world would you think we had a problem with market-ready cattle being too big into Kansas? But it's just about the long-term deals that guys have, different ways they have them. Sometimes they're hauling them north, sometimes they're hauling them south, but evidently we don't have a supply problem if we continue to gain ground the way we have. I still think we've got a lot of opportunity here early this spring coming up here. The board's saying we could get into the 120s. A lot of people, including me, think that we'll get into the 130s sometime late winter, early spring. But man, we've gained a lot of ground just here in the last month, and wouldn't be surprised if we don't stall out somewhere in here sometime around Thanksgiving time for sure, as people kind of got their minds on turkey and things like that. But we've had a pretty good run here. We're still not over being mad about what happened in Holcomb, Kansas. Of course, it's hard to be mad about the fire, but everything that happened right after the fire, and then the advantage that was taken from your feeder cattle sellers and your fat cattle sellers and the whole industry as far as that goes. We're not going to get over that. We still want some answers from that, but we've had a pretty good run. We've got to appreciate that. And there's no need to be wearing a frown. We're starting to sell some of these calves pretty darn high as we start to get into some of these bigger consignments, especially in the mountain states and the northern plains. Some of these ranch calves that are coming in, they're drawing pretty good attention. We're just now starting to get wound up with our harvest, and a lot of your farmer feeders won't really get into the market until they get harvest completed. They get their combines power washed off and back into the shed. So we know we've got some more demand coming there, but we're seeing some pretty impressive calf prices. And of course, any yearlings that are available anywhere, you can pretty much name your price on those, especially if you've got a square load of them or more. But let's talk about what happened here on Tuesday. Look at the board for Tuesday. October live cattle futures up 37 cents to end the day at 111 even. It's funny, both your spot live cattle and feeder cattle ended the day at round figures. December fat cattle, live cattle futures unchanged at 113.45. October feeder cattle down 55 cents at 145 flat. Just like I said, on square numbers, and then your second month's out unchanged. November was unchanged at 146.07. Fat cattle trade has been non-existent on a direct basis, negotiated. Very, very few deals, deal here, deal there, from 110 to 111, so we're right in there. But your buyers did come to the auction, and that's always fun to see, and I love to quote auction market, especially on fat cattle. But we did have higher prices at a big fat cattle auction up in the northern plains at Stockman's Livestock in Yankton, South Dakota. Sure, a couple bucks higher, maybe $3 higher in spots, but they ranged in price on your steers and heifers from 108 all the way up to 116 and a quarter. With some a bit higher, especially on some of your two-way cattle. And that's what's great about an auction. You got guys that are kind of specializing and coming in late and finishing those cattle off maybe they're not as efficiently feeding to take them into those extreme weights and take them up into those higher grades, maybe towards a average choice and bred or up into prime. But there's some guys that's kind of got a knack for that with their feeding program, and sometimes it does rejuvenate some cattle when they've been eating one finishing ration for a long time and then they get taken to somewhere else. Of course, there's going to be a lot of shrink and some expense involved there, but get onto a different ration might kind of taste a little better to them and take them on up into another stratosphere of being finished. But when you get those farmer feeders that like to finish those near beer cattle off, it creates even more demand in there. And some of your best prices were on your two-weight cattle, some of them returning to feed, some of them just pushing your packer buyers up there a little more. But look at this one set of two-weight cattle there, 95 head of black steers at Stockman's in Yankton, weighed 1257. That's not an extreme weight anymore. There's still room in those cattle at 117 1/4. That's a pretty impressive market right there. But talk about some feeder markets. I want you guys to check out Texhoma Livestock Auction here on Wednesday. Clay Myers, good friend of mine, he's having a barbecue special there at Texhoma, and I guarantee you it'll be the biggest thing that's happened in Texhoma since the last time they had a barbecue special in Texhoma. Not a lot going on there these days except for at the auction barn there, and he's got a big run on Wednesday. But get a bid into Texhoma. If you can get there, get there. You guys are listening to this pretty early. We're here on Wednesday. He starts around 11:30. He's got a big run, including about 900 head of calves coming in. And he's got some yearling feeders too, including these Freeman cattle. There's 540 head of these steers. They're going to sell in big lots now. 850-pound feeder steers from the Freeman family there, and don't miss that free barbecue at Texhoma Livestock Auction, Texhoma, Oklahoma. Look at your real-time index on Cattle Market Central late in the day on Tuesday, set at 144.02. That's up 8 cents. Talk about some of your big sales that happened on Tuesday. Philip the Giant's back. We're getting back into seasonal sales at Philip. 5,600 head. You can watch Philip and the next sale I'm going to talk about, Ozarks Regional Stockyards in West Plains, Missouri. You can watch both of those on dvauction.com every week. But Philip had 5,600 head there. And if you look at your automated market report from Cattle Market Central that feeds right in there, it's plain to see that those popular weights of steers and heifers were sharply higher. $5 to $8 higher at least, just looking at your weighted average. And some of those peewee calves weighing under 500 pounds, both steers and heifers, selling up to $15 higher. And they had a pretty good run last week, guys. Well over 4,000 head last week. Look at your best tested weights on steer calves. 1,662 head of 5-weight steer calves in Philip, average 558 at 161.91. That's nearly $9 higher on the weighted average than just last week. 1,332 head of 6-weight steers in Philip, average 636 at 156.55, and that was about the same, about $8.50 higher on your weighted average. Look at your best tested weights of heifers, and noticeably a lot fewer heifers coming to market than steers. Not sure what percentage of those are going to be kept back, but guys are feeling good enough about the market. If they've got enough equity or they've got a good banker, they may be keeping some heifers back because we are getting supplies kind of back into our favor. But 616 head of 5-weight heifers, average 543. 143.04 on the weighted average price, and that's nearly $6 higher on the heifer calves there. But look at this extreme quote out of Phillips, South Dakota. 123 head of 525-pound steers bring $174. Wow. Ozarks Regional Stockyards, West Plains, Missouri, 4,100 head there. And they pretty much took back what they gained last week. West Plains was one of the first markets last week that really shot up a lot higher. But this week, the steer calves were $3 to $6 off, and that was just about what they gained last week because they were sharply higher last week. your bigger feeding calves and what yearlings they had there were steady to $5 higher. Heifer calves steady to $3 lower there, and that's called by a conservative call man there. Dan Hill works for Missouri Department of Agriculture. Also told me about these 4 loads, and I found them on Cattle Market Central. 4 more loads of those Gardner Farm cattle. They had 4 loads of them last week, but 220 head of them weighed 938 at 137.60. They brought 15 cents a hundredweight less than they did last week, but they weighed 15 pounds more, so kind of a wash there. I'd say that's a good steady market on some big yearling steers there. Those will be about 75% black and pretty good kind, maybe average flesh and pretty good weigh up on them as they're coming from down there into Arkansas. But look at your other markets around. Unionville Livestock Market, Unionville, Missouri. That's like the opposite in Missouri from West Plains. West Plains is down central, south central extreme. Unionville is north central extreme. And they had 3 loads of those Rockin' R cattle from Lucerne, Missouri. 3 loads of them. You see them right here. They averaged $865 at $149.82. Pretty good price there on some big steers. But the best market that we saw all day long on Tuesday come out of a market that's fairly new to Cattle Market Central. Kimball Livestock Exchange, Kimball, South Dakota. Met those folks up there in Omaha. Really nice people, and they brought a really nice group of people with them there. But they had the whale of a sale on Tuesday. Look at these loads that I pulled from Cattle Market Central. Big loads of 8 to 950 pound steers. Yearling type steers right there in Kimball, South Dakota. And included in all these jags here was 62 head of 929 pound steers at $151.35 and 75 head of 814 pound steers bring $156.10. That's your feeder flash for Wednesday.